Hello and welcome to Dragons,
Unicorns,
and Other Creative Creatures. I am here today with
me, as always, Rona Gofstein, and I'm here with the fabulous
Dr. Kevin. And it's just a you and me show today.
It is. I like doing these though, because this is when we kind of talk about the creativity as a lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah, so to speak. Yeah.
Because it is.
Very much so. And you know, one of the things that I actually wanted to talk about is, first of all, I want to dispel a myth that's really common out there, which is, I have no creative abilities.
Ugh. Somebody, you know what, if you're thinking that, I guarantee you some teacher sometime said the wrong thing to you at the wrong time period, and somebody drummed the wrong thing. It could be a parent too.
Yep.
But some adult with a capital awful A, told you something that wasn't true. And you believed them, unfortunately. And hopefully watching this and other things you've been doing, you're not believing them so much anymore.
Well, you know, one of the things about it is, and I try to explain to my clients that will come to me and say, I don't have any creative abilities. And I'll be like, no, because we were born creators.
Yeah. We were created to begin with.
We were created, we were born creators, and we all go through some kind of creative process. And sometimes because it doesn't look like what we think of as creative,
Right.
we don't assign it as creative. Well, I don't paint. Okay, well, you don't have to paint to create. I don't sing. You don't have to sing to be creative.
Yes, you do. No, I'm kidding.
Now, all I can think of is, I really couldn't
I did that for my 8th grade production.
sing.
Yes, we did have to change one line in that song, but other than that, yes, I did that for my 8th grade production.
Oh, yeah. But when I dance, yeah, I
that's
know
the
which
line.
line you had to change.
Guys will give a second glance was when it was changed to.
Ah,
Yes.
yeah. But
But no, it doesn't have to be painting or singing or performing or.
sculpting, or you can be a creative problem solver.
Thank goodness.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can be creative in the way that you cook or you set up your house, even the colors you choose to wear.
Absolutely.
But we have the creative urge within us.
Yes.
And I think that that's what's important, and what we want the audience to get today is that you need to be able to know the flame is there. Maybe you have it under a bushel. Maybe you have it under a basket. But it's there.
It is.
And you want to find it.
Yeah. I mean, if you even thought, oh, I'm not creative, chances are it's because there's a want, there's a desire.
Yeah. And so there's a few different things that you can do to be creative. And I want to give credit where credit is due, which is one of the books that I recommend to my clients that are struggling with creativity on a regular basis is The Artist Way with Judith Cameron.
Julia
Cameron.
Yeah. I take a trip through it because it's a 12-week course. She kind of breaks it out that way, and I try to go through it every few years because I always uncover something new.
Yeah, and in that you take yourself on artist dates.
You do. She has 2 things that she likes to require. Actually, in her next book, she added a third, but morning pages, which are you sort of get up and you just right onto 3 blank pieces of paper, and the artist date.
Yeah.
Those are her 2. She spells those out before she walks into any of the other aspects, because she knows that as you're going through these weeks and she calls them recovering a sense of identity, recovering a sense of compassion, all these different things, that the artist dates will be part of that process of uncovering and recovering and discovering and things like that. So she spells those out literally right up front.
Well, and you know, you pointed it out before a little bit, and oftentimes this is a lie that we're told in our childhood.
Yeah.
And it's a lie that comes about because you have an adult figure that struggles with their own creativity or is very judgmental and this goes back to one of my soapboxes. Here goes Dr. Kevin. Up on the soapbox.
There's a whole new show. Up on the soapbox with Dr. Kevin.
Actually, I used to do a segment of being up on the soapbox when I was doing a radio show 5 days a week.
Go.
Yep. And so going up on that soapbox is that we have an educational system, besides the fact that it doesn't support or promote the arts. It's the first thing that gets cut. It's the one that, all of that stuff. But art is subjective.
Yes.
And you have these teachers that go into objective.
Right.
And so they make incorrect statements based on
objectivity. Right?
Yeah, on who they see. Well, don't plan on making a living as an artist. That doesn't look like a flower. Well, what do you mean it doesn't look like a flower? So, a lot of times it picks it up from this perspective of this doesn't look like whoever wants it to.
Right.
And I also find that that subjective is also very damaging, when it comes to things like interpreting literature. Because if somebody is a writer,
Absolutely.
and they bring forth an author that they like or whatever, and it's not one of the teacher's favorites.
Try writing genre fiction,
Yeah.
Forget it. There's no quote unquote respect for that. It's fluff. It's, a waste of time. It's holding up the publishing industry. But hey, what's but who cares? Well, it's not a worthy. That's the thing, they contradict themselves. First they say you'll never make a living at this, and then they say, that only a certain type of thing is worthy of being called art, and the things that are worthy of being called art usually keep people poor and broke. So, there's so many conflicting ideas and information and input, and and if anybody, if you have a teacher who's been told, artists starve, they're parasitic, they're whatever, and then this information is passed to you, you get a message that's pretty negative potentially about living a life that's a creative. So you may be being very creative, but God forbid you should label it that. So.
Well, and it can even be a fear that's inside that gets reinforced because there is a lot of risk that it comes when you put your art out. And I want to throw out actually a little bit of a tribute here to my 6th grade teacher.
Cool.
I haven't talked to her for years. I looked her up a couple of times as an adult and had some communication with her. And her name was Mrs. Linda Roman. And in 6th grade, she said, look, there's so much that you have to do that's mandatory, and then there's room that I can work with.
Right.
And so as 6th graders, she said, do you know what you want to be? Do you have any idea where you want to go? What do you love? And she would create unique programs for people.
Wow.
And then she would base part of your grade. And she was an English teacher, but back then, 6th grade taught English and spelling, and you had 2 primary teachers, and one taught math and science, and the other one taught all of the ones with
all the English language arts, yeah.
All the English language arts. And so here I am in 6th grade, and she says to me, I think this is really funny looking back on it, but she says to me, do you have any idea what you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a writer. I was just really clear on it. And so she said, okay, well, a writer needs words, so I'm going to create special vocabulary tests for you to increase your words.
There you go.
And I'm going to teach you how to diagram sentences and how to put things together that wasn't going to normally be taught in 6th grade. And I had to submit a short story every week.
Wow.
This was her way of engaging me and supporting me.
Yeah.
And when I left the 6th grade, I was actually testing out at a 3rd year college level vocabulary.
Well, that'll do it. Plus you were using it too. I mean, the whole thing, they say, if you're going to be a writer, you need to read a lot and you need to write a lot. And so being asked to turn in a short story a week, which is very Ray Bradbury, is terrific.
Yeah. And so you have people like Mrs. Roman,
Yay.
who support and promote and say, well, if this is what you want to do, and then you have the people that says, well, that doesn't look like a flower. And so I think it's very important that people, again, understand we are born creators. We recreate, we procreate, we are creative, and you just have to give yourself permission
Yep.
to be creative.
Which is one of the things the artist state does so nicely. It's sort of if you already feel like you live a creative life, for me, it was a way of, when I first started to do it, it was a way of just being very intentional and being very aware of that part of me. And it was about anything but writing, because that was sort of how I was being creative, or how I wanted to be creative full time and normally. It was about just doing other things that gave me different input, different experiences, sort of like the way you received all these different vocabulary words, which opened your eyes and your mind and your thoughts and your stories. So I always try to do things that aren't writing when I do my artist dates.
Well, one of the things is one of my nieces, my middle brother actually married a woman that had a 4-year-old child, and she became family. She's actually getting married in a month. And
Oh, wow.
She's in her 30s now, and but I'm Uncle Kevin, and and things like this. But when she first came into the family, she was a little shy. And, and all of this, and I would sit down and we would play this game at all the family gatherings, which is I would give her a new word and then she would use it to see how long it took her mother or stepfather to pick up the new word that she was using.
Oh, that's good.
And she loved it. And she was like 4, 5, 6. I think we did it for like 2, 3, 4 years. And, because it wasn't like I saw her every day or every week, but family gatherings, it would be like, okay, let's see if we can get this one by on him. Let's see, go in there, and she'd use the word, and we'd make sure she knew what it meant and how to use it and things like this. And you can do those things.
Precocious. Let's use the word precocious, shall we?
Absolutely. And so it's so important that parents also encourage their children to figure out whatever kind of arts they want. And and then sometimes we recently had Kelly Belt on the show, and she's Voltaire Design Studios, and she does designs clothes and steampunk and stuff. And she talked about that. Sometimes it's an active need.
Yeah, she wanted a better Halloween costume.
Yeah, and that also that she had to create an outfit, and she had 20 minutes.
Yep. How can we make this work in? Talk about creative.
Absolutely. I know that when the one-woman show that I wrote was being translated into a movie, we started shooting it, and the director said that somehow the conversation came up that it would be nice if there was a closing piece of music for it. And so the shooting was going to be, when he brought it up, the shooting was going to be over in like 24, 48 hours, something like that.
Oh, wow, so it was right at the end.
So it was like right at the end. And he said, it would be nice if we, if there's a song or things like this. And he was kind of talking as if maybe would there be a song that would fit, we could get the rights for to have at the end of it. I said, no problem. Went home that night. The next morning I show up and there is the closing song that I wrote. And I'm not a songwriter.
And I'm not it's interesting how we do that.
Yeah.
I've been in writing conferences and stuff where I've written poetry and I don't write poetry.
Yep.
But that's what happened then, or then in that moment, or in that space, or with that prompt, or with that energy, whatever it was. So
creativity is about allowing. It's so much about allowing. And
it is. And not being creative is about disallowing. very much so. And it's about being, and that's what we refer to as being blocked in some ways.
I have this thing where drawing and painting per se is like it's not something I would ever say, oh, I'm going to try to like sell it, make it for a living or do things like this. It's stuff I do play. And there's actually a story that comes up how we decided on this theme today.
Yeah.
But I decided I was going to bring pastels because I enjoyed it and an artist sketchpad when I went on a vacation in the Caribbean. And we went to this island, and it was an island that the cruise line owned. It was like a private island, so we could go into the beach, stuff like this. And I just sat there and I sketched it and I did the things and stuff like that. And I'm kind of, and early on when I was a kid, I tried painting a lighthouse and tried doing some different things. And
I never moved on beyond the flower.
and didn't get a whole lot of, feedback, so to speak, about it. It was one of kind of those, you got the feeling of they're trying to say something, figure out something polite to say because they don't want to say something bad, but the whole setup makes you already know that they don't think it's very impressive.
You can kind of see it in their eyes.
Yeah, so I'm doing this, and somebody walks up behind me and they look over it, and then they call their wife over. I'm on a cruise ship. They offered to buy it from me. And I was like, well, no, no, take a picture. It will be better. I had 3 or 4 people offer to buy that drawing from me.
Yeah.
But the whole thing was, I did it for me, completely for me, with no idea of I am producing art.
Yeah.
It was, I just want to have fun. And
Amazing.
that's such a key for people trying to get involved with their creativity.
It can be, yeah, because, and it's one of the reasons why, as I said, I try to keep my artist state away from writing, because that's a place where, yes, I'm creative, but it's also a place where I'm critical, where where I need to be. I need to look at it with a critical eye. If I don't want to be judgmental of myself, because that will shut, when I start judging my work, then I shut down. It's not that I get blocked, but it's just, I start second guessing. And then my sort of natural writing voice will start to disappear if I do that for too long. So I need to be critical, and I need to think of it a certain way. I need to, plan certain things, plot certain things. But when I do the artist state, that I like keeping more unstructured, either, tactile or visual or something that's very different from the process I go through when it goes to writing. Because then when I come back to writing, I've sort of like opened up this other part of my abilities in my brain, and things flow better. If I haven't taken an artist date in a while, I'll feel it. I'll be like, I'm just not feeling it. Why am I not connected? I'm like, when's the last time?
Well, Jeff and I do this. We're doing a year of celebrating the pagan holidays. And we have a group that does this with us.
Nice.
And different people run different holidays.
Ooh.
So whoever is running the holiday is, like, what is this holiday about? What is it for? What does it do? And so we were recently doing Lunasad. And
Sounds like you're murdering the moon. That'd be Lunaside.
Lunaside. And
that sounds pretty.
Jeff was running that one. And because of, it's the energy of the late summer and blah, 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 he got and decided that the group was going to paint fairy doors.
Nice.
And I actually brought in
I love fairy doors.
the fairy doors.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not in between the lines, so to speak.
You don't strike me as a following the lines kind of guy to begin with, so.
But this was the door, and I it's so funny because we were talking about the Seelie and the unseelie court.
Ooh, the light and the dark.
Yeah. So this was my Seelie court side, golden light and the sun and the silver, but there's a mesmerizing eye And then this was the unseelie side.
It has very more of a dungeon door.
Dungeon door, more of a blood red.
That's not an all. That's an all-seeing Saruman type of eye.
Yeah. And then we had this little wooden fairy door, and you're probably not going to be able to see it. It says, "A fairy lives here."
Those are great. You can prop them up like on flower pots or by tree trunks and.
Yep. And there's a little fairy peeking through the door. So the fairy came through the door to do that. Now, is this ever going to sell at a shop? Nope. Doesn't need to. I have no desire to sell it at a shop. Doesn't have to be anything.
What was it like to make them, though?
Making it was, you suddenly had a very diverse group of adults sitting around the table, and sometimes it was, I mean, there was lots of conversation before then because we did the, what this day was, and talking about the Green Man and the different the different fairies and goddesses and gods involved and stuff like this. And we ate fabulous food. And then here we
says
are.
punctuating it.
And then here we are outside.
Oh, wow.
In Jeff's mother's fairy garden.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
She's got a Winnie the Pooh garden and a fairy garden, and she just has all these flowers, and it's just beautiful outside. And you have 6 adults sitting around, and interestingly, 3 males and 3 females.
Very yin and yang balance.
Not planned that way. On this, and it would be dead quiet. And the only thing you'd ever hear is blue. Like, not even, can you pass me the blue, with blue. Here. And then
you call it forth.
I'm trying to create all of the paints and the stuff like this. And this is a kind of artist date.
Yes, absolutely.
Find something to celebrate. I mean, and they have and I have mixed feelings, little mixed feelings about them. I'll be interested in what you say. They have the wine and sip parties now.
Oh, yeah. That's about the best way I can probably paint, because it's the only way my inner critic is going to quiet down enough to just kind of relax and go, okay, this is going to be a mess, but it'll be fun.
Yeah.
But I think it could be a good entry.
Well, it can be a good entry. I recommended to some people that were trying to discover their inner artist, well, there are this, wine and, what do they call it? Wine and draw parties, or
something combination of alcohol and paint.
Painting.
Yeah.
And then I was at a friend's house, and I looked at this picture, and I really liked the picture, and she had it hanging up, and she goes, well, I did it at one of those wine and drawing parties, painting parties, and she goes, but I hung it up because her husband wanted her to, but it's not really very good. And I was like, I really like it. And he goes, well, she stands at the front, and this is what this is supposed to look like, and she's instructing you how to draw it so it looks like what she has, and it didn't really look a lot like hers. I said, well, I don't know what hers looks like, but I really like yours.
It's funny. I've seen people stand side by side, and they're focused on trying to somewhat recreate, but it never comes out exactly, and they tell you that that's part of it.
It's not supposed
your
to.
Version of this. This is not paint by number.
Yeah. But she made it sound like, and I could have interpreted it incorrectly.
But she was still judging herself.
Yeah, her inner art critic was kind of like, well, and she pointed out a couple things. Well, this tree was, the branches were supposed to be longer, or the moon was supposed to be different. And I was just like, no, I really like it.
And that's hard. Yeah, because she saw somebody else did a great job, or whatever it is. She put that judgment on it, so that's what she sees in hers, which is too bad. But it's still a good way maybe for some people to start. Yeah. You're in a big group of people. There really isn't a lot of pressure. If you don't like it, you don't like it.
Yeah, I think the thing that I wasn't in the experience, so I don't know how much of it was the interpretation of the person there.
Right.
But I would almost want to have less instruction of, well, this is how your best way to paint a tree. You can say, well, this is how I paint a tree, but you can paint it any way you want. But I got the feeling like that the facilitator was a little like, I'm going to have you paint it so it looks like how I painted. That had that feel, and I could be wrong.
I think depending on what you're painting, I know they go through a process. Like, for example, so we're all going to do the background. So first you do the, the entire background in whatever color, whatever blue or green or whatever. And then next we'll do the building side or whatever it is. So you're kind of going through it step by step to an extent. But there's always room for interpretation.
So, my church I belong to, the UU Church in Nashua, they were having a make Christmas card, no, Valentine's Day cards party.
Nice.
And anybody could go, and you went in, and each table had set up, and they had different things that the woman who was running the event created, and you went, and there was some fascinating, like different, like there was stamps, and there was different materials you could do. And so we're sitting at this, so I'm sitting at this table, and I've never been to this kind of event at my church. My church is fairly new for me here. I've been UU my whole life, but this is a new church for me.
Yep.
And when we're sitting there, and there's the card, and there's a step-by-step instruction on how to make it. And what they're doing is they're sending the Valentine's Day cards out to the whole congregation to make sure that everybody in the congregation gets a Valentine's Day card, which is very sweet. Okay? So we're sitting there. I'm there, Jeff's there, some people from the congregation are there. And I kind of look and I start picking up and start doing stuff, and they're like, oh, no. She gives us instructions, and when she comes around, this is kind of how you do it, and you put this layer on
We're
this.
about
and
to
you
draw
this
a red
stamp.
flower with a green stem, aren't we?
Yeah, right. And they said something about, yeah, she likes you to kind of stay on track or whatever. And I said, well, not always getting our way is a great growth experience, and she's getting ready to have one. Jeff got up and left the table and went to another one.
I don't know him.
And I was making all of these funky cards. And the funny thing is, the woman came by, and she stopped, and she looked. She looked at for a second, and she looked, and she was like, well, that's fun. And she walked off.
But nobody else had ever tried to not do it her way.
Yeah.
'Cause she was the teacher, and you have to do it the way the teacher says.
And so sometimes we do it to ourselves. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not here to recreate her card 10 times. I'm here to take these materials and create very unique cards. That's what
Otherwise,
makes
you may
me-
as well just go to like CVS and get the little Snoopy ones and cut them out.
Yeah, I mean, like, what's the difference? So talk about what a favorite artist date of yours is.
Ooh, that's a good question. When I first started, and I still like to do this one, is to give myself a small budget in a unusual store, or just one of my favorite stores, like $10 in Michael's, to do something or buy something I haven't bought before, in a department that I haven't. I tend not to shop in there, whether that's yarn and needlecraft or sometimes the painting, because I don't. That's not usually one of mine. Coloring books, I've actually find it's just when I know I need it, and coloring is very different from writing. There's a different tactile. It's a change in sensation, and that helps me a lot. Scrapbooking used to be one I did quite a bit because it was funny. It was related to me. Scrapbooking is still storytelling. It's just more of a visual way of doing it, and about a specific time. So it's creative. It's a way of being sort of creative nonfiction, as it were. So
Yep.
You've got the pictures. I had friends who took it very, very seriously, and this was something they did, near professionally, and some of them actually did go into creating layouts for people and selling stuff. But for me, it could be messy because I didn't have that same emotional desire for the outcome that I do with my writing. So that's something I like. I've started to think of them too, sort of merging them with other things I've been doing with the concept of desire. Just really trying to be more aware of desire in my life. And so adding that into being creative, just realizing that where there's a desire, there's creativity. And so sort of merging those together. I attempted cooking as an artist. Cooking just stresses me out. But I know people that's a very creative thing for them. Gardening, you mentioned your future mother-in-law. I mean, clearly that's a place where she creates. But yeah, doing something a little different. Sometimes even just rearranging my room. I've done that. I like rearranging space.
Yeah, I have a good friend of mine, and she actually has studied feng shui, and she's an organizer, and she's a musician and stuff like this. And she'll go through this period where she just has to rearrange like every room or one room, and just and it just comes in, and and it's one of her. I would call that one of her artist dates.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I've taken a few minutes to go down YouTube and sing Broadway tunes to the karaoke videos.
Ah, there you go. I am.
Preferably when the kids are out of the house, because really it's just not fair to them.
Well, cooking is definitely one of my artist dates.
There you go.
Though, I mean, I do all the cooking at our house.
But when it's intentional, when there's when you bring an awareness to it,
Yeah.
it's different.
When I do I'm going to have a cooking day and cook for the whole week. And I'll tell you, actually, one of my favorite things that I used to, because I was on the road for 2.5 years
That's
at one
right.
point. And I was staying with people that invited me all over the country to stay and teach classes and do my services and stuff like this, would be to go into somebody else's kitchen. I love to go into somebody else's kitchen and just go, is there anything that you can't eat, won't eat, have that I can't touch, that's safe for something special? And then I'd throw them out of the kitchen, and I would see, what can I make based on what's in this kitchen?
This is like a reality show.
Yeah.
Better than.
Yeah, and I used to love, like, what could I come up with
Yeah.
to do that? And so there were so many different ways that we can play out that creativity. Years ago, I was in between, I think I was 19, 20, something like that. And I was in between jobs. I was going in and out of going to school. A job had run its course. I was looking for another job. And I was looking at any ways I could make money. Because, I was raised in a family where, like, unemployment was your last thing that you did ever to claim. I mean, you figured out how to make it work. And this is, I'm not saying anything against people that need to go on it.
No, but this is how you were raised. This was the attitude, right?
This was the attitude. So I was doing it. And so I got offered to do a stand-up comedy routine at a club that they were going to pay me for.
Sorry, I love that.
And to do some song and dance and stuff like this. The offer came because the guy, the manager, had actually seen me in the Rocky Horror Picture Show doing the stuff, and said, you can do this. So I chose 2 or 3 songs, and a couple I did like funny lyrics of, where I kind of like did the, changed it into lyrics I could not sing on this TV
Family
show.
show.
On a family show. But then I took a couple of songs, and I said, we're so used to hearing these songs, and I want to sing them differently and in a way where I'm going to give you a different plot point for it. And one of those that I did was All I Want Is a Room Somewhere from My Fair Lady.
My Fair Lady, yes.
But I sang it as a very poignant drama. And what I did is I drew a scene for the audience. It said, this woman just became an unexpected widow. She's just recovered from her husband suddenly dying. She is now sitting there. And I sang in this, and I did that with like 3 different songs.
I never thought of that, but you can do that with quite a few. You totally change you take them out of their original context and give them a new one.
And you draw a different thing.
Yeah.
And did I write the song? No. Did I, but that's still creative.
Yeah.
And it's fun. Improv is great.
Oh, God, yeah. You can go on forever on that. And you don't have to worry about, we've talked about this before. You talked about this when Max was on. What is original and what is art? Again, we're back to the concept of it being subjective. I think if it first touches you and then impacts somebody else. So, for example, the drawing you were doing on the Caribbean trip, you first did that for you. So it was art that was feeding you, that you were doing to feed yourself. And then it touched other people as well. So to me, that almost by definition makes it art and worthy, and any of the other words we wonder about whether or not we should and can attribute them to what we create.
Yeah, and I think that it's, again, there are so many different ways. There are even board games or games like, I'm not going to remember the one where you draw the pictures.
Pictionary.
Yeah, it is Pictionary.
Yeah, it's sort of like charades, but
With things. Or charades is, but these are all ways to touch the inner artist. You can do it as some of these board games that have you do the different things where you're performing or doing thing. That performance is a type of creativity.
Yeah.
You have the writer of the words, and I found this out the hard way because I had this image of how a particular piece I wrote was going to go, and then the person who actually did the performance did it very differently.
Oh.
And yeah, there was definitely
Artistic differences.
Yes. He saw himself alive. I saw him dead.
I saw him dead. I knew you.
He had it coming.
I knew you were going to pick up on the song cue.
He had it coming.
I guess you could say.
Well, and I found, and I think we talked about that when John Swift was here, is like singing Broadway songs was my therapy as a teenager.
Yeah. I cry to them. I mean, very few things up until recently would make me cry because after being a teen, I shut down. I was crying too much and it wasn't really permissible. And I, Far From the Home I Love from Fiddler on the Roof will immediately bring me to tears. Certain songs from Sunday in the Park with George. It was one of the few places where it was easy and acceptable and not a problem to cry. Now almost all of them make me cry. Now Defying Gravity, of course. There's even a song from Seussical that will absolutely, it's called Alone in the Universe. Oh. And by the way, he's alone in the universe because he's creative. It's Horton, and it's Horton from Horton Hears a Who and JoJo from that as well. And they both feel alone, and they find each other. And because they ask each other, do you dream in color? And are you real, or are you just a really big think? And both of them feel alone in the universe, and they are pleading to find somebody who can hear them. And that one just sends me completely over the top now.
But sometimes, you don't have to be able to sing on stage or to perform at a mic to be very creative in singing. Not only is it a good emotional release, but it can also really do a lot of it can be an expression of your creativity and how you sing a song. So I'm trying to give people things that they wouldn't think about.
Absolutely. I mean, Casey Neistat, who is a huge YouTuber, he's a vlogger on YouTube. My older son followed him, and he did a commercial, I think for Samsung, and he basically said, we were told, we couldn't make movies because you needed to have this, and you had to have a production company, you had to have this, and we were told this, and we were told this, and our answer, watch us.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not suggesting everybody go out and put stuff up on YouTube, but it is unlimited what you can try and what you can do. And
well, think of the original Blair Witch Project.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many movies that are out there that were not supposed to succeed or were completely unexpected. My Big Fat Greek Wedding was a one-woman show.
I did not know that.
It was a one-woman show, and this woman named Rita Wilson, whose husband is Tom Hanks, went to see it, and she loved it.
Yeah.
And that's why, if you watch it, you'll see it's produced by Playtone Pictures, which is Hanks's company. And it never hit #1. It actually became the highest grossing movie to never hit #1 in history. It hit #2 week after. It's like all these big blockbusters would open, and My Big Fat Greek Wedding would stay at 2. And the blockbuster, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. And I think what sort of happened too was, first of all, I had the word of mouth, which was wonderful, before social media became,
what it is.
What it is and how it changed. That totally changed box offices. But it was also a case of, the blockbusters would open and they'd be sold out. Oh, let's go see My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I hear good things about it. And it benefited a lot from that. But yeah, it was just a matter of, she had the story to tell.
And we all have a story to tell. When we think about it, we all have a story to tell. And no matter how we tell it, I
I don't care if you tell it with popsicle sticks.
you know, like I'll sing around the house, and I have some standard songs that I just really like to belt out, or I like to really get into, and stuff like that. One of them is "The Man That Got Away" from "A Star Is Born" with Judy Garland.
Yeah.
Imagine that. But you know, get into that and just really stuff like this. Well, there were several people in some semi-quick relationships that I had through my 20s that would keep on telling me I couldn't sing when I would sing around the house. And they'd be like, you can't sing, like, you know, or blah, 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 blah. And for some reason, like 3 people I dated in a row had degrees in music, and they were music snobs, and you had to, you know, kind of do this.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, you know, don't sing in the show. And so, and I would point out, I've sung on stage, stuff like this. And one of the best moments was because if I'm going to sing on stage and I'm going to learn a piece and it's going to be arranged and I'm going to be, then I perform. I'm an actor who sings. I will never be a singer who acts.
Yes, I can see that. I mean, I could say the same thing. Yep.
Yep. So, but I can do it, and things like this, and so I kept on. So I had this guy that I was dating, and it was really serious. And I went and I auditioned for a role in Chorus Line for a regional touring company.
Speaking of 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah. And I auditioned with the I Can Do That number. And I found this great old zoot suit from Goodwill. I went in and I learned a little bit of the tap number, and I did my audition and blah, 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 blah. And I got the role.
Very nice.
And I go home, and he's like, but you can't sing. I've heard you sing, you can't sing. And he was just like, the director must want to sleep with you. That's the only way you could have gotten the role.
You did an audition for Bohème, for God's sake.
And I was like, excuse me? He's like, but you can't sing. And you know what?
Go
I
away.
realized I had so many people that told me that during a period of my life that I started going, I can't sing.
Yeah, you start to listen.
But it's different when you sing in the shower or you're singing at home, and you don't care if you hit the notes because it's an emotional expression.
Yeah.
So if you're out there and you know, you may not know if you can sing, you may not know if you can draw, you may not know if you can act, unless you're actually put in a position where you're set up to succeed instead of set up to fail.
And artist states definitely set you up to succeed. Over and over, I mean, beyond the artist state themselves.
And the sad thing is, I turned the role down because this guy that I was very seriously involved with said, if you go on the road, I won't be here when you get back because, you know, the director clearly just wants to get in your pants.
See, this is one of those wisdom of the ages. You know, now you look back and go, good, don't be here when I get back.
Yeah, don't let the door hit you.
Yeah, I need the closet space.
Really. But don't be discouraged. Don't let other people define who you are and what you are. And the last word of wisdom on this show that I would like to put out is, if you have children, no matter how old or how young, but especially as young as possible, do artist dates with them.
Yes. What a wonderful idea.
Let your inner child come out and finger paint, draw, sketch,
Let them
Play-Doh,
dictate.
sculpting,
Yeah, follow them.
do whatever.
Yeah. Blow bubbles.
Yeah, you know, let your child see how joyful, and there are going to be some things that you don't do well, and that's okay, and your child is going to see it's still okay, and...
Growing up does not mean, or getting older does not mean suddenly you do everything well.
Yeah, and...
Or that you stop experimenting.
Well's a deep subject. Go have a creative day.